găsit, doamnelor și domnilor. Puțini juriști ai timpurilor noastre au reușit să lege trecutul dreptului de provocările prezentului, așa cum o face profesorul Reinhard Zimmermann, fost director al prestigiosului Institut Max Planck pentru Drept Privat, Comparat și Internațional din Hamburg. El este considerat una dintre cele mai importante voci ale tradiției civiliste europene. Astăzi la Iași, în primul său dialog cu publicul românesc, profesorul Zimmermann nu vine doar ca istoric al dreptului, ci și ca martor implicat într-o Europa tensionată, în care sensul dreptului, rolul judecătorului și încrederea în instituții sunt din nou puse la încercare. Welcome, Professor. It's a great honor for me to have you as my guest. În primul rând, aceasta este prima dumneavoastră vizită la Iași și în România. Care sunt primele impresii despre universitate, despre oraș și despre mediul academic deopotrivă?
Thank you very much for having me. It is indeed my first visit to Iași and indeed to Romania. I have met very nice, very kind colleagues. I have met very interested students today. They asked lots of questions, which is very good. And I've walked around a little bit in the old part of the city. I'm very impressed. It couldn't be better.
Conferința de astăzi s-a intitulat Tradiția civilistă. Într-o perioadă în care accentul se pune pe inovație și digitalizare, de ce este încă relevantă tradiția ius comune și studiul dreptului roman?
It is the foundation. It is the basis of everything. We live in a digital age. But even in a digital age, people will continue to, if I may just use one example, will continue to die. So the question is, what is going to happen with their estates? And this is the law of succession that's dealing with that. We may have to devise new rules for digital wills or for digital assets, but they must fit into the system that we have inherited, our system of the law of succession. Testate succession, intestate succession, transmission of the estate, and so on. So we've got to know where we come from and where we are in order to build something for the needs of today.
You cannot change these things, like being born, dying, needing to leave an heritage and things like this.
No, and people will continue to conclude contracts. They will continue to dispute who is owning what, and family relationships will have to be resolved. So these are all traditional questions which were already solved by the Romans and then by the civilian tradition building on the Roman law. And so we've got to know this in order to develop our law in a meaningful way for new challenges that arise today.
Credeți că tradiția civilistă este în esență un efort de conservare a memoriei juridice sau poate fi și o sursă de idei pentru reformele viitoare ale dreptului european?
It can serve as the basis for future ideas. It provides the background against which we must develop solutions for ideas today. And sometimes we may even find certain solutions in the past which we can imaginatively transpose to the present.
Can you give me an example of this?
The digital wills and the digital assets. I mean, we all own property. And the law has been dealing with how our assets devolve, how the debts, who must pay the debts after our death. Now, what happens with digital assets? Facebook accounts, Instagram accounts, and so on. Are the providers allowed just to cut it off, to keep it for themselves, or would the heirs have to, the universal successors, would they have to get access? Can the deceased himself or herself determine this? These are new questions, but we've got to try to solve them with the tools which we have inherited.
And we already have those tools.
Yes.
Ați construit o carieră care leagă dreptul roman, dreptul comparat și codificările moderne. Care este cea mai mare provocare în menținerea acestei perspective transversale?
I think there's an intimate connection there. I've been running for the past couple of years an Institute of Comparative Law. We've got different legal systems, different devices in the legal systems to solve legal problems. But if we want to find out what are the commonalities, what are the differences, we have got to look back to legal history. Why? Why did one legal system develop the one solution? Why another one? What are the experiences that have been gathered? And that means, since we've got a common basis in the European legal systems, Western Europe, Central Europe, Eastern Europe, that we've got to look back into the history, where there are commonalities and how these commonalities have in some instances been preserved. Then we can build on these commonalities. And in other cases where differences have arisen, we can ask why. Are there different cultural aspects, different economic conditions? What are the experiences with these different solutions? And that gives us an informed view of our comparative legal map, our comparative legal landscape as we find it today. Then we can make a reasoned assessment of where we stand and what is the better solution.
Puteți să-mi spuneți care sunt cele mai mari diferențe pe care le-ați observat între vest și est?
I'm not an expert in Eastern European law, but as far as I can see it, they were part of the common European tradition up to the communist time. Then there was the communist period in which they departed from our tradition because, I mean, the communist ideology was based on the idea that law would wither away in a perfect society, so one didn't pay so much attention. But in some countries, I know this of Hungary and Poland, the teaching of Roman law preserved a connection to our past and to the tradition that we have cherished in the West and continued in the West and Central Europe. But after the end of the communist period, I see a realignment. In many countries, in your country in 2011, a new codification has been implemented, a new civil code, yes. And this has been based on comparative research. Before I came, I looked into the law of succession because that is something that interests me very much. And I have seen that it is very much based on the French tradition, your yes. Law of succession, but there have also been influences from German and Austrian law. So in a way, there's an interesting mixture, presumably based on the fact that the people who have been responsible for the recodification have been trying to find to search and to research solutions that we've got in the Western and Central European legal systems and to make your legal system benefit from that.
În multe țări europene, inclusiv în România, corupția a fost o problemă recurentă. Credeți că dreptul, în special cel civil sau constituțional, poate contribui real la reconstrucția încrederii în instituțiile publice?
Yes, I think so. This is the rule of law. Yes. The rule of law that we must cherish and that must be upheld in the courts and taught at the universities. That means that corruption must be outlawed.
But how can we do that?
By teaching your students, the next generation of lawyers, in the tradition, that is also a question of the tradition, how we develop democracy, rule of law, and so on, and by imparting these values on which we build our societies to your students.
You met today
yes.
a lot of students
yes.
who asked a lot of questions.
A lot of questions.
Can you tell me the interesting ones? What did they ask?
Some of them asked questions directly relating to my lecture.
Okay.
Like, what is the value of Roman law? Why do we have to study Roman law? There was quite a lot of interest in artificial intelligence.
Yes.
Which didn't have so much to do with my lecture. One student asked me a question which was very much going into my current research interests, and that is mandatory family protection and succession law, forced heirship, compulsory portion, and so on. I have proposed a reform model on the basis of comparative research that I've conducted together with a number of colleagues, a reform model for German law. We've got to move to a more flexible system there. And that was one of the many questions that was very welcome. It's always good to see that students are interested and that you can stimulate them.
I talked with a lot of students, and they told me that Roman law, it's very difficult to learn.
I don't think so.
Of course you don't think so, yes.
Of course, there's the problem of language, Latin. But like Roman law is the basis of our modern legal systems, Latin is the basis of many of our modern legal languages,
Romanian
particularly
too, yes.
yours,
Yes.
French,
Italian,
Spanish,
Portuguese.
Also to some extent German law, English law. The English language is to a surprising extent also based on Roman vocabulary.
Yes, but
so my exhortation is students should not only study Roman law but learn Latin. I suppose this isn't mandatory here, but there are very good translations of the Roman sources. The Roman sources are fascinating. They are full of interesting details of cases that have happened in the past and so on, and one can make it very lively. Roman law is not a dry subject with just involving doctrine and so on, and something that you've got to learn, but very interesting detail. The daily life of the Romans comes to life, and then you can ask yourself, do we still have the same problems? Are the problems different? And so on. So I think it's the perfect introduction for your study of law, because it is a distant mirror, so to speak, a distant mirror in which you see your own image.
After 200 years.
Roman law from antiquity was always further developed. It was rediscovered in the 11th and 12th centuries and then applied to modern circumstances. There it changed, and then throughout the centuries, up to the usus modernus, to the 19th century Roman law, it was a living system. It developed further and further. And so it's not stagnant. It's not something that is just of the past.
From the standpoint of an European jurist, what risk do you see in this trend of contesting authority and common European norms?
In my career, I have worked towards an understanding, bridging the different national borders that we have still in Europe. I have been a member of commissions trying to put together principles of European contract law, principles of international commercial contracts, to build up again a common legal culture on the basis of the legal culture that we had in the Jus Commune. This is disintegrated in with the codifications in the 19th and 20th centuries, because legal systems have grown apart. They've become national legal systems, but we've got to bring them back together again. This has been my effort, and therefore I have been very much in favor of the European Union. I think it shouldn't just be an economic union, it should be a political union, a cultural union, a defense union, very important today. Not every state should have its own defense force, but we should have a defense mechanism and the same kinds of weaponry for all of us. So far, everybody has different types of drones and so on. This is not good. And then we see in many countries a growing nationalism. And I'm trying to do whatever I can to fight this, to resist this in Germany. I know it's happening in Germany, it's happening in England, it's happening probably also in Romania.
Yes.
I see that very critically.
But what can we do to stop, in a way of speaking, the emergence of Eurosceptics?
I think one must always start with the young people, because that is the next generation, and I'm a professor and I'm responsible for the students. You must send the students abroad. You must expose them to ideas from other countries, to the cultures, to the people there. People must learn to communicate across the borders. You must make them familiar with the common values that we've got in Europe, in your classes here. And we've got the Erasmus scheme in Europe, where you exchange students. In the law school where I teach, it is mandatory. Every student must go for 1 semester abroad. This is very good, because you must see your own legal system and your own system from a distance. And that will also make you aware of certain tendencies which you don't like. And one of them is the nationalism that is rising. That is rising again.
Not only in Romania.
Not only in Romania.
Yes.
In Germany with the AfD, it's terrible what we see there. But everybody, I think, has got to do what he or she can at the level where he is. I'm a law professor. I'm teaching at a university. I'm researching, and in my research, I try to emphasize what unites us. And I try to impart that to the students. That is what I do in my profession, in my situation, in order to counteract this. Everybody must ask himself or herself what in their position they can do. I suppose in the television you've got many possibilities.
Well, we have you here. This is an example, yes? We can be united in diversity, right?
That's the motto of the European Union, yes. We must be united. We must treasure what we have, but respect what others have. Exactly, and this is a dialogue culture also that we must foster. We must always talk to the others, thinking that the others, the other nations, the other people that we talk to, can also be right. So we must listen. We must learn again to listen.
In your works, you emphasize not only doctrine, but also the cultural dimension of law.
Yes.
Can law be considered part of European cultural heritage alongside the literature, philosophy, or art?
It can indeed. I mean, we have inherited our religion from the Jews, from Israel. We've inherited our philosophy from the Greeks. We have inherited our law from the Romans. And it is part of our cultural genes. And we must treasure this. We must bring it out. And we must build on it today. And it is very definitely, I do take a cultural approach to law. It is part of our culture.
Indeed it is. What advice would you give to young Romanian jurists who wish to pursue an academic career in this field of law, Roman law?
Open your ears, open your eyes, go abroad, make experiences. These days, I experience many students at home, possibly also in Romania, want to go into the profession as quickly as possible. I always advise against that. Given the demographic development, we become older, we will have to work longer. In Germany, there's a great dispute. I think essentially we will have to work until we are 70 at least. Otherwise, we won't be able to finance pension funds and so on. So we mustn't start our careers too early. We must use the youth to gather experiences, and in law that means to go to other countries, to make a postgraduate degree in England, in the United States, in Germany, to learn new languages, to widen your horizon. In your profession, and I can see that from my profession, you are, as you grow older, you are specializing more and more.
Yes.
You must specialize. But it all depends from which basis you specialize, that you must have a broad basis on which you can build. And you must build that basis up when you are young. Then you've got more resources from which you can draw later on. And you must always also later on, I do make that, I try to do this for myself, and I exhort my colleagues to do that, also to broaden their horizon, not just to concentrate on your speciality.
But you are 73, yes, and you are still working. What is your work ethics? Because it's very important to find out, because we have judges in Romania that retire at 50. They no longer work. And I think this is the age when everything is possible, not retiring.
No. I would find that terrible if I would have had to retire at 50. I would find it terrible if I would have had to retire at 70. Fortunately, the Max Planck Institute gives me a lifelong appointment in the institute as an academic member. I can carry on. I can carry on perhaps even better than previously, because I had a lot of jobs in the Max Planck Society and so on, which have now fallen away. I can concentrate on my academic work. And that is the advice that I give to students. You must do what you are really interested in, what rises your enthusiasm. I don't want to stop. I want to carry on as long as the good God gives me the health and the abilities to carry on, the mind and so on. And I'm very grateful for that. And this is part of my life. I haven't chosen a profession as a duty and so on. Mm-hmm. I think I have a vocation, and I want to continue with that.
In closing, what message would you like to convey to the academic community after your first visit in Iași?
To the academic community, to my colleagues. Foster that interaction, go abroad, teach and imbue the values that we have got in our tradition, Roman law, the civilian tradition, the constitutional traditions and so on, to the students, and make them aware of the great tradition that we are living in, and of which my colleagues are part, and their students will be part in the future.
Professor, it was a great honor for me to have you here. Thank you so much for your words. And I'll remember this: go abroad. Yes, because you said it like 10 times. Thank you for the advice. Doamnelor și domnilor, vă mulțumim și dumneavoastră pentru că ați fost alături de noi la interviul săptămânii. Ne revedem și data viitoare.